Hi everyone, it's Dr. Ramani. Welcome back to this YouTube channel on all kinds of topics related to narcissism, narcissistic abuse, difficult relationships, and difficult people. It's my hope that this content will help you cope, heal, and understand these relationships. In the month of May, in honor of Mental Health Month, and this is probably we might even bleed into June, we're featuring videos on mental health in order to provide some basic education on mental health issues, as well as tie these mental health issues to both narcissistic abuse and narcissism. And today, we're going to be talking about panic disorder. Now, let's start by understanding what a panic attack is. Now, a panic attack is a person experiencing an intense, overwhelming sense of fear, and that's accompanied by physical symptoms like a racing, pounding heart, trembling, shortness of breath, a fear of losing control, and almost always a fear of dying. Now, a person can have a panic attack regardless of whether or not they have an anxiety disorder. Panic attacks are not uncommon. Most people have experienced at least one. Now, in order for a person to have panic disorder, they have to have what are called recurrent, unexpected panic attacks. And those recurrent, unexpected panic attacks have to occur along with either being worried about having another panic attack or the consequences of having a panic attack, and or changes that the person kind of behavioral changes the person has so they can avoid another panic attack. So either they're worried about having another panic attack, or there's a change in sort of movements, behavior, call it what you will, to avoid having another panic attack. And so panic disorder requires having more than one panic attack, and that these have to be unexpected. They have to come out of the blue. Some people have panic attacks. Like a person with phobia will have panic attacks, but the thing they're afraid of is what sets off the panic attack. So if a person, for example, is afraid of flying, if they get into an airplane, then they will experience a panic attack on the airplane, but they kind of anticipated that was going to happen, sort of thing. Or a person who's terrified of public speaking may have a panic attack before they have to speak. The two things are linked. And then for some people, it's a little bit more predictable than that. Like sometimes when it's something they're scared of, but sometimes they still have unexpected panic attacks. What the issue is with panic disorder is these panic attacks come out of the blue. Okay? Now, a person with panic disorder may also have some of those panic attacks. They're called situationally bound attacks that are always associated with something that makes them anxious. I don't know, like I said, public speaking or getting on an airplane or anything else that they're scared of. But in order to have a panic disorder diagnosis, you have to have some of those what we call spontaneous panic attacks, and they have to be recurrent. This isn't about just one panic attack. As I said, the symptoms of panic attacks are very physical. I said racing heart, sweating, trembling, can't catch your breath, feel like you're choking, chest pain, feeling sick to your stomach, being dizzy, feeling pins and needles in your extremities, a sense of like you're watching yourself from the outside while you have a panic attack, or you feel like almost like you're in this dream like almost like broken from reality. And like I said, people with panic attacks also think they're losing control, and they think that they're dying, okay? We do know that panic disorder often sits alongside something called agoraphobia. And agoraphobia is the fear of being someplace where help will not be readily available or escape won't be very easy. Kind of makes sense, right? So if a person is having panic attacks and they're spontaneous, being out in public would either be embarrassing in their estimation, or they may not be able to get help if it was like, I don't know, a crowded store or a big arena or even an airplane, for example. So as a result, a person with panic disorder, it's not unusual for them to start restricting their life more and more and more. And then before they know it, they're reluctant to leave their homes. Now let's talk about narcissistic abuse and both panic attacks and panic disorder. Panic attacks are definitely not unusual in people who are living with narcissistic abuse. That chronic vigilance, the confusion, the helplessness, the powerlessness, and the anxiety that all accompany narcissistic abuse, we would actually almost expect people to have panic attacks. Like it's basically the most severe manifestation of anxiety. In these cases, it's quite possible that a person going through narcissistic abuse, if they're having enough of these panic attacks, they may actually end up getting diagnosed with panic disorder, which always concerns me a little, because then that background context of narcissistic abuse may be missed, and the sole focus would be addressing the panic attacks and the panic disorder, missing that there's this major stimulus in their lives. In a person with existing panic disorder, upon entering a narcissistic abusive relationship, the person already has panic disorder, and then they're bad luck, they meet someone narcissistic and get into a relationship with them. Then what there might be is, within the confines of that narcissistically abusive relationship, anxiety about having a panic attack. And since these relationships, narcissistic relationships, are all about feeling anxious, this fear may be borne out. The person's so anxious they end up having a panic attack within the relationship. And it's quite possible that a person who's narcissistic will certainly probably not show any compassion or empathy, may go so far as to make fun of the person, and will definitely gaslight them on this basis, saying, well, you're the one who's unhinged with the panic disorders. That's not unusual. Now, when we shift gears and think about narcissism and panic, because anxiety is a part of narcissism, especially covert narcissism, panic can also make an appearance in narcissism, which we often don't think of because panic attacks seem so sort of anxious and overwhelming anxiety. But as we know, anxiety is a much bigger part of narcissism than most people fully understand. For a person with a narcissistic personality, especially if certain issues are being triggered, such as feelings of inadequacy, the panic symptoms may actually get activated at times when the person feels inadequate or like they failed or feel a sense of public shame. If that's overwhelming enough, that sort of sense that the mask has fallen, the narcissistic person may actually have a panic attack. Now, because during a panic attack, a person can feel quite scared and vulnerable, afterwards they may sometimes feel quite embarrassed about having had a panic attack. This dynamic could be very pronounced in somebody who's narcissistic and be manifested almost like in a rage in people who are narcissistic. So after that attack, they will actually, so people say, hey, you okay? I heard you had a panic attack. I didn't have a panic attack, and really get rageful because people are pointing out a vulnerability in them, even if all those people are trying to do is to help them. Now, in terms of treatment for panic disorder, the treatment literature is actually quite promising. The cognitive behavioral therapy has found to have tremendous utility, and sometimes that can be, in some cases, at least in the short term, combined with medication. People with panic disorder are also taught techniques like relaxation training, mindfulness, and self-talk. But as always, as with everything in this series, if you are having recurrent panic attacks, it's absolutely essential that you speak to a healthcare provider as soon as possible so you can get an appropriate evaluation and then find out what next steps will be. So I hope this was helpful in helping you understand panic disorder. Please look in the video notes and you'll find some basic information about panic disorder. And thank you.